Do you know that term, ollie ollie Oxenfree?
I've heard it.
Show of hands, ollie ollie Oxenfree. Okay, everybody here.
Okay.
But half the time people are like, what is that at all? Is it a detergent?
If you've been tagged out in a game of hide and go seek or tag, you'd say ollie ollie Oxenfree once the game is done and you're going to reset, and then everyone can come in for free. I am Adam Hines. I am his cousin. People typically don't believe because we look so different.
I'm Adam's cousin. My name is Sean Krenkel. I am the co-founder of the studio.
I remember the first day they told me that they're cousins, and I laughed at them because you could not find two more different personalities. I don't know how they're related.
I guess the first thing I did was I made a big comic book a couple of years ago called Duncan the Wonder Dog.
His book sold out of its first pressing, got a great write-up in the New York Times, I think, right? Pretending he's not listening, that's fine.
And that did well enough that I was able to kind of weasel my way into the video game industry. So I actually moved from LA to San Francisco to work at Telltale Games. Sean and I, for a while, had just wanted to start our own thing and kind of had been talking about it.
Literally for like a decade about how we could end up working together and couldn't really ever figure it out or find the right time. And that was the perfect time, one, because I got laid off, so that was good, and I needed to get off my ass and either start a company or find another gig, and it just so happened at that time we had a pretty specific idea that we wanted to create or deliver, and it was really this concept of how can players interact with stories in ways that other studios aren't letting them do it. That's the beginning of Night School.
What's so special about this place?
The island was a military fort that...
It's a tourist trap for morons who want to buy Christmas ornaments of World War II crap.
Sean actually took me out to lunch and kind of pitched me on the idea before any of this had really come together. And his original pitch, to his credit, was, hey, let's try to make a walking, talking game. And like, it is exactly what he pitched.
Nobody's done it yet, why not do it? Because every other game you gotta walk into a trigger and then you wait for people to talk to you and then you move on, and they feel very separate, those experiences. So we thought, what an interesting challenge, like try to have it be all around that. We said, let's take calculated risks, basically. We wanted to get a small team together and make the game really sing based on being well written, well acted, looking beautiful, and sounding awesome. I wouldn't have it any other way now, like I love it. But I personally did not realize how crazy it would be running a company.
I don't know how Sean does it. He seems to have so many things to do all the time.
It's unrelenting.
Sean is like the most high energy person I think I've ever worked for in my life. Like, he comes in and he's like, I didn't sleep, I got a kid at home, I've been sick the past week, let's do this! And you're like, what is going on?
So I have a 3-year-old too. So like those two things at the same time are insane, but very similar. I'm not saying you guys are 3-year-olds, I'm just saying...
At this company where there's, 4 people, and then you have some contractors, and that's it, there's no one to pick up your slack at all. So people aren't gonna be able to wipe their butts in that little bathroom unless we're getting that toilet paper in here. And, which by the way, sorry crew if there's no toilet paper. I think there is, I hope there is.
So you all moved in?
No, not really.
Well, if your room's close to Alex's, you should be careful since she snores like a truck. You wouldn't think it to look at her, but it's like a chainsaw fighting a pack of wolves.
Can we just stop talking about this?
Sean and I really liked the promise of the story of a coming-of-age tale that you can kind of choose how you come of age. So we thought it would just be fun to play in that space and see what would come out of having a very oftentimes benign tale of these kids just going to party on a beach, but then resting on top of that just supernatural madness and insanity and kind of more gamey systems that you would want to play with and pull with, but having the real core story just be about this 17-year-old girl who is just dealing with a lot of stuff in her life right now.
The actual story itself of the game really turns into Alex's story.
You can kind of define how she is going to ingest and expel that when she becomes whoever she's going to become.
Everyone, this is Jonas, Alex's new stepbrother from... I already forgot where.
Yeah, he's cool, so be nice.
So I never really tried to write for a high school tone of voice. I just always wanted them to be intelligent, complex, complete, surprising characters, and I didn't really think like, what would a teenager say?
There's so many just great interactions with all of them, and so much delicious awkwardness.
Hey, what's the... Ow.
Writing an adventure game, an interactive story of this nature, is definitely half writing and half mathematical problem.
We never take control away from you. We never put you in a cutscene. We never stop the player so that they feel like they're just watching a TV show.
So the script ended up being 1,200 pages long. It got a bit unwieldy there, just because of all the different scenarios that you can find yourself in and change.
More fancy things. Look at that. This game's complicated. The first day I came in, Adam was like, all right, let's get this in the game, and just puts down like a 100-page script. Adam just cranks out content.
Probably at least once a week, I find a line in the game that I didn't know existed, and I've been playing this game like 100 times now. The fact that he has built essentially this entire 8-hour multiple branching game in his head and on the page is, I will never understand how he does that. It's amazing.
Like, just for comparison's sake, a Telltale game, we would count it in lines, and a typical Telltale game was like 2,000 lines, and this game had 12,000. So it had quite a bit much more.
Jonas, where are you?
Sean and I, at the beginning, we would always say, oh, it's like Goonies or Stand By Me meets Poltergeist. So we always wanted to hit that tone of, it's a big mystery at the beginning, and it's fun, and then it gets scarier and scarier and weirder and weirder, and the stakes get raised and raised as you go along.
Does it hurt?
We tried to make sure that anything we've put out ever doesn't overpromise what this game is. Like, we didn't have people doing wire work with 2 pistols flying off of the ceiling or something. Like, everything people have seen is the game, and that's how you play it, and we're not overpromising. I think it's been awesome in that the biggest challenge that I've wanted to give the team is just make the best work you've ever made, make the coolest game possible.
Like, he's just so pro, like, creativity.
His bottom line is he wants the best thing this team can make.
I think that's what equaled to a lot of late nights, is that we're so excited about the stuff we were coming up with. We just had to get it in, no matter how long it took.
Just make the thing that doesn't exist yet, that you would just hope it did because you just want to play it.
Why would that... The hell?
The first time we put a trailer out, totally randomly, I guess Robert saw the trailer and said, wow, look at what these guys are doing. And I'm paraphrasing Robert because I wasn't there at the moment, and it looks amazing and beautiful. No, he was basically just saying, like, this totally looks like it should fit in our umbrella. It's like the perfect relationship.
I hate everything I do, but I'm surprised at how much I am satisfied with the finished product of this, really.
January 15th. Hopefully.
It's more of a Monday.
Fingers crossed. Like, if this whole place were literally on fire right now and you guys were on actual fire, he'd be like, the universe, baby, like, it just is what it is. Like, it's
gotta roll with it.
Yeah, that's how he is with everything.
What happens. I love the art.
I think the art is fantastic.
I love how it really doesn't feel like much of what's out there.
This game doesn't look like any other game. Really, it doesn't look like any other game.
I don't think we could have had a better artist for Oxenfree.
I'm Heather, and I'm the lead artist at Night School Studios, and my job basically consists of figuring out what we all want everything to look like, starting from the concept, and then basically finishing it until what you see when you play it.
I think this was a really cool opportunity for her to not only just do a portion of the game, do all the art in a game and create her own kind of whole world.
I was just really excited to work on something that I would have so much ownership over.
Heather, how'd it feel to be a lead on a game like this for the first time?
It's kind of like running a marathon and then someone hands you this baby and they're like, congrats, you're a mom. You're like, I don't even have a crib, what do I do? I was more used to just being told, make this, and I'll just go into my corner and I'll make the thing. I'll get feedback and make the thing better. And this cushiony layer was gone.
Dinner time. It's never too late to make dessert. Not anymore.
What the hell is this?
Do you want to play a game?
Just the overall concept of it, it really made me think of when I was growing up. I spent a lot of my summers in a really small town in Oregon, so I'd spend a lot of time just wandering around in the woods or on the beach. And I would just come across, weird, dilapidated stuff that had just been forgotten. It was really exciting to be able to do like a nice love letter to that memory that I have.
Okay, that's a little strange. Why wouldn't they lock it? I mean, somebody should have locked it.
Maybe there's no need?
Heather's art is kind of very darkly playful. It is soft and pleasant to look at, but at the same time, when things get scary, they do get scary and it gets kind of weird. I love cute, fluffy things. They're a big part of my life, but I also need a nice angsty outlet, and this game has been perfect for it. That's where all of my brooding nature goes into this game. It's not a clash of styles, but it's like this blending of kind of a fairy tale children's book, but at the same time, just this adult complexity to it. The original stuff that we were referencing was kind of cartoon saloon stuff. The Secret of Kells and Song of the Sea. They're just so gorgeous, and they have this really interesting way of dealing with perspective. Eventually, as I learned more about the characters, like as Adam started writing the script, the nature of the concept to me was becoming a little darker. So I started looking at artists like Tyrus Wong. He did a lot of Bambi work, but his work outside of that is so amazing too. He just has a really amazing way of hinting at things rather than, I'm going to draw a tree, so draw every single branch and every leaf and all that. He just had a really nice way of hinting at that. It was like really subtle, and that is kind of the way that we deal with what these teenagers end up encountering. So it was kind of challenging at first, since everything was taking place at night. Like, how can I make that look more interesting? So I ended up actually just going back to my memories. Fall is gorgeous, so why not have it happen in the fall? I started looking into coniferous trees versus deciduous trees, and I was really fascinated by golden larches for a while. They're these really amazing pine trees that just turn bright gold colors, and they're all along the Northwest, so I'm like, sure, why not?
This is like a genuine forest.
Want to turn around?
No, I'm just saying this is like... it's pretty sprawling, that's all.
Yeah, I've always liked that word. Sprawling.
There were definitely a lot of challenges in terms of how do we show them where to go and what's climbable and what's not. That was a pretty big challenge for a while. Because I like to paint things pretty subtly, like that's what I enjoy doing most, there was a lot of, you can't tell where you're supposed to go. So I'm like, okay, I'll just, there's a giant brick road here. And I'm like, no, it can't be that obvious.
Doors that open themselves have been like a really bad thing in my experience.
Oh, really? Even automatic doors like in supermarkets?
Well, I got my elbow pinched in one of those one time, so yes, even those.
And I love how the characters sit in the landscape. I use Photoshop. We actually did have a discussion about do we use Illustrator or Photoshop, but just based on the fact that we kind of wanted a more traditional look to it. In the very beginning, it was really tough to make the characters look like they belonged on top of those Photoshop paintings.
because there's really nothing else 3D in there except for the characters.
Like one of the biggest tech challenges actually was making that really stylized art feel in the controls like an actual place that you're moving around in, because it's all 2D, right? But it's supposed to feel like it's a 3D space where you can move farther back.
Hey, that's...
Clarissa! Clarissa, hold up!
The amount of times that I've said something crazy that we should do, and she does it the next day and makes me look not as crazy as I am.
I was so excited about it, and that usually ends up turning out well when I'm excited about something. If we ever had an idea that we wanted to integrate, he was definitely the person to ask first because the game would not exist without a Bryant.
Like, how are we gonna do this thing? I think we might have to cut it, and then 2 days later he's like, I just did it. Like, don't even worry about it.
Bryant's sort of the one-man army.
Yeah, he really is.
I'm Bryant Cannon, and I am the lead engineer at Night School Studio. So I write all the code.
The first conversation we had, he's always wanted to make an adventure game like this.
Sean came to me and was just like, I'm going to make a game. It's going to be basically Sword and Sorcery meets Limbo meets The Walking Dead, which are 3 of my favorite indie games of the last 5 years. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll do that.
You know, if stories are brought about through communication, can we make communication the key mechanic? It starts with the fact that you can move freely and that your dialogue choices are, you know, spawning directly from your character. That makes its way even into the radio and how you use the radio. Like if, you know, if talking with your words is how you communicate with the other humans, the way you communicate with these supernatural beings is via this radio. And can we make that fun? Like, had that not been cool or fun or interesting, we would have made a different game.
What if it isn't? What if they just said it was decommissioned?
I think if they had alien autopsies or whatever you're suggesting is happening in there, we'd have been taken out by snipers about 50
Games for me is like family almost.
I was a big fan of all the Zelda games.
That was kind of like how I grew up, was just playing games with my brothers.
I always made my own like fan fictions for those worlds and stuff like that, so to go and make your own world is just, it's really awesome. So I had designed games since elementary school, just on paper in class. I'd be doing that instead of doing my math assignment and whatnot. But in high school I taught myself how to program so I can make games. I actually went to Best Buy. I was like, I want to make games. What can I use to make games? And they're like, oh, you can use this new program called C++, which is actually a programming language. It has technically nothing to do with games. So I was like, oh great, I'm going to buy these books on C++ and I'm going to get the C++ program and everything. And then I read through the entire C++ book front to back. I was like, but I don't know, I still don't know how to put an image on the screen even. Like, it just taught me the basics of C++.
God, even when like the craziest crap is swirling around like a friggin' poop tempest, she still finds a way to be annoying.
Well, that's a skill, at least.
So our main job for this game was to basically get the game built to the point where you can play it and get a good idea of how the game's feeling.
Taking all the stuff that Brian has done and taking all the beautiful art that Heather's created and taking all that amazing writing that Adam has created and putting it into something that somebody can actually hit start on and play.
Do not attempt restart without supervision. So I don't know.
Terrific, you'll be my supervisor. Supervisor Jonas.
None of us, including me, have ever made this much of a content-based game before.
So it was just tough knowing that the player could basically do whatever they wanted.
The amount of stuff we were trying to get in this game and figuring out how technically we'd be able to do that. Heather would give it to us, Bryant would give it to us, and we had to compile everything. And we had these 100-page scripts.
Keeping track of 12,000 lines of dialogue was very, very challenging.
Each and every line has an animation that is sort of custom assigned to what those characters are saying.
When I think of one conversation in the game, I think of 1,000 sticky notes for one conversation between two characters with strings between them.
Bryant's basically the user manual for our engine. We do use Unity, but he's built so many custom tools in it.
Designers don't have to write any code. All they have to do is go to a drop-down list and say, character says this line, and then they connect it to another node that says, character says this line. And then there's a choice, and then based on that choice, you just connect it. You know, it's all visual. So that way we were able to quickly prototype different conversations instead of having to code all that stuff by hand every time.
I am constantly surprised with how many times I'll ask Bryant what he's doing. It's something that sounds like it's in another language, and then he's like, oh yeah, and I've never done this before, and only 5 people are on the internet talking about it. But that is Bryant's life a lot of days, where he is just on an internet forum learning how to do something that maybe 10 people in the world know how to do.
Photography prohibited.
That is a very serious sign. Restricted, keep out. Oh, they're not messing around.
Nobody cares anymore.
One thing that's been great about working here is you are literally turning around and looking at your boss in the eye and seeing the excitement that they both have for this project. It always makes you want to push like harder and harder every day, making Bryant's hours and hours of building stuff for us like worth it.
Kevin has a schedule of freak out on Monday, he's relaxed on Tuesday.
Say something crazy by
Wednesday.
Yeah.
Thursday we somehow get it in, and Friday it's all broken.
Yeah. It's a good arc.
We once had a mall Santa who was kidnapping kids. I think that's been so far the scariest thing that's happened.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that does sound pretty scary.
I think the most rewarding thing about making games is seeing other people play your game.
It's really interesting to actually watch people play through and see how it challenges them as the person that they are.
In fact, we had one reporter come over to our studio, and she was supposed to be there, I think, for 30 minutes or something. And she stayed for an hour and a half and just got lost in the game.
In games, it just demands such an intense level of audience participation. You know, if you fall asleep in a movie, the movie's going to happily reach its conclusion, but you have to pick up a controller and play a game. You have to be the character. It's potentially a lot more powerful in being able to make you feel like you are this character.
Getting that feedback of people not only really loving it, but being like, I can't wait to play this again, I can't wait to finish this, I can't wait to see how it ends, I can't wait, I can't keep playing, I'm too scared. And me and Spencer turned to each other like, I didn't even know that was possible. Like,
we were pretty sure Sean just like hired people to come in and make everybody feel okay about everything.
I hope that people have a good time hanging out with these characters. And
Bryant inevitably always has like a buffer time. I just assume he has like 50 other things that he's processing at that one moment, and then you're like, Bryant, how do we fix this? And he'll just stand there. And I'm never sure if he heard the question or not. I think I would just shut down if I was Bryant, so he's a way stronger person than I am, and definitely way smarter. You can cut that though, don't tell him that.
He wins.
Yes.
I think the acting is amazing.
They were all universally just really knocking it out of the park.
It's really when the game feels like a game, is that moment when they start talking.
I hate working with actors because I am so specific with every stupid damn word in these scripts, and then if they say it even better, but not what I had in my head, it takes me forever to just rectify it. But it was thankfully very fun, and I was able to just quickly get over all my insecurities and issues.
Oh yeah? What was that one called?
Peabody, I think. I'm trying to remember the sign, but like half the letters had fallen off, so it spelled pea-pork.
They're little people on the screen, but they're real to me, especially when they started saying words. It's just so cute. Like, oh, look, he said hello, you know, like a little baby.
Right around the time we do the animation work is usually the time we're actually getting the voice actors' lines in the game, and that just changes the whole feel of the game.
Before we had the voices in, we just had subtitles at the bottom, so we'd have to read everything. And we were like, this game kind of sucks. I don't know, what are we gonna do? This isn't going anywhere.
Sometimes you play games and you're like, that people wouldn't really say this stuff to each other. But like this is, it's like you talking to your friends.
When you can latch on to writing in a game, it's still such a rare thing to have actual emotive conversations.
And once we got the voices in, it was just like, oh my God, this works. Like these are people. These are like real people having a conversation.
What did you flip? Because it kind of did the opposite of what we wanted.
I flipped the... it's the only one, Jonas. What other switch could I even flip?
Oh, good point.
We started off with Alex's dialogue. I'm like, yes, I finally know who you are now.
It was the first time I voiced a playable character that had so much to say.
Just gave me a way better idea of who Alex was. The nuances of how she speaks, how air is expelled from this area.
The cool thing about Alex is she only speaks when you tell her to, and she'll only say what you tell her to. And being able to see all these different directions that this character could go, and knowing that people playing the game are going to have so many different versions of this character that we're all working to create. I thought that was really cool.
What is this? What is this? What does this mean? Who are you?
I feel like it was a bit more intimate.
Because sometimes you work on games that are such a sprawling project.
But like this, I could text Sean if I had a question, you know?
I mean, it's nice to have Adam being the one directing the sessions because he's the writer. And so if there's something he didn't like, he would change it on the spot and we'd fix it.
It's like the most mentally exhausting thing because you can't not pay attention. They all have so many lines and so many scenes and so many versions. And it's just a very hard script to perform because it's all out of order.
Yeah, hopping around in the timeline and recording out of order was a little confusing. So it's gonna be a wild ride playing the game for the first time.
Like, I'm surprised at how well the conversations work, given that they were not in the studio together.
I continuously find it crazy that they all recorded their voices separately, and when you play the game, it's crazy how well they work together.
We recorded a lot of it during the summer, and their AC broke for a few days. They brought in like 8 fans, and they would aim them literally like this at her, and then between takes, they would like blast them, and then they would have to turn them off, and she'd be like, I can't breathe.
I mean, just from what I've heard of him, like that one story about the cops just straight buying him a beer, just what would a guy like that see in her? Like, at least at the start.
You know, Jonas, frankly, I don't really know, and I don't really care.
So Clarissa antagonizes Alex consistently through the whole game, which would be fun when I would come in and be like, how horrible am I today? Like, and there was like a baseline of just, it was consistently pretty mean to everybody. I would take Clarissa's insults very personally.
Well, she's around here somewhere.
She is so annoying. God.
She's that girl from high school that you hated.
Yeah, she's that girl.
She really is.
Holiday party, that was like the compliment I kept getting. It was like, oh, I hate you. That was nice. I was so excited to record Alex's comebacks in those conversations, and being able to say all these mean things about Clarissa was so fun. I don't really know why I'm so horrible to her. And then, you know, I got my reasons. Life's hard.
And even Clarissa, who's perhaps the most unrelatable character, you know, she has her reasons for everything.
It's funny you say least relatable character. I've definitely talked to other people who've played it now who are like, I totally get where she's coming from. Like, she's the hero of the story. I'm like, what?
I haven't seen how Clarissa looks. Does she look mean? I bet she looks cool.
Speaking of which, she dated Michael? Is that right?
Yes, quite annoyingly.
I'm a huge fan of games. I play a lot of games, so to work on something this is something I would want to play, just makes it even cooler.
I can't wait to play. I'm so excited to play it. Not only because we're in it and I want to kind of see the final product, but it's totally a game I would play. I mean, it's this giant environment, it's a narrative, character, nitty-gritty stuff like that, and it's spooky.
The music was another thing that was just a big draw to the game and made it feel so interesting.
After the game came out, it was like, oh, these guys on Reddit are trying to figure out how you got this effect. Like, what plugin did you use? And all I could reply was model number for the cassette deck from like 1978, because that's what it was.
I don't know what I thought the music was going to be. We kind of described, oh, you know, it's like John Carpenter, but also Boards of Canada, and also a bunch of just like totally random things just thrown into a stew and being like, hope you understand this. I don't know what we're going to get back from this guy now. Yeah, he kind of nailed it right out of the gate.
My name's Andy Roman, and I make music for video games and film and television.
He's a guy that I knew through a friend of a friend from 10 years earlier, and saw his name just randomly on like a weird petition that I was signing. He was like 3 people above me, and I'm like, there's Andy. Oh my god, I wonder how that guy's doing. He makes awesome music. Reached out to him, and it turned out he had been doing music in the games industry the last few years, which I had no idea.
Something about it, like the vibe was right up my alley. Takes place in the Northwest, in a fictional town, and as more details came out, just more and more it seemed like my sort of thing.
Andy's work has been incredible in being as dynamically reactive as you could ever imagine.
Anyways, Mom's off on her honeymoon, so I've been charged with showing Jonas around this weekend.
And it's Jonas, not Jonah?
Yeah, Jonas.
It could have easily been like synthesized orchestral music, but there are a lot of interesting sounds I wouldn't have expected to be in the game at all, but it gives it a really unique flavor.
I'm not a purist. I'm not like, oh, everything has to be analog and everything has to run through tape. Like, I use just as much digital stuff and computer stuff and plugins that emulate whatever as much as I do real stuff, but it's just fun.
See, this is what reel-to-reels do. All this warpy just sounds like, something's broken.
If everything's just in the computer, it's not as fun as having a bunch of like cool, silly toys.
So this has the coolest meter you'll ever see. It's like a tube. It's called the Magic Eye. Yeah. See that thing, that pressure-sensitive keyboard?
When we talked about this whole shortwave thing, it's like, well, I could buy some samples off the internet, or I could buy myself a World War II radio and figure out how it works and use that, and that's exactly what I did. If you're hearing radio sounds in the game, went through that. Part of the shortwave radio was buying 200 feet of copper wire and like getting up on my roof and stringing it around as an antenna. That's the authenticity right there.
Can somebody change the station?
It's pretty amazing. He had done so much of it without even seeing the game.
So I wasn't scoring to particular scenes or anything. It was just kind of to capture the vibe, and the vibe was kind of this, everything's running through a VHS player 20 times, or it's an old World War II shortwave radio that we're hearing stuff through. So part of the music writing process for this was also the sonic processing like using samples of shortwave radios or recording melodies right onto an old reel-to-reel before I did anything else with it. And so that led to a good collection of songs, and I'd say 90% of those are actually in the game, like the very first demos I ever did.
It's all I could think of to do it.
It was really cool to actually have Andy come in the office.
Until I actually went down to work at the night school studio in LA for a week, I hadn't been able to do a 100% playthrough. So I hadn't gotten the feel of it. So they sat me down the first day and I got to play through. The way the whole thing threaded together and the decisions I made throughout, by the end, it was almost like it 100% new to me. And so I got to the end and kind of took off my headphones and looked around, and everybody was kind of looking at me and they're like, "Are you crying? Are you crying?" And I was like, "No, but I'm pretty damn emotional right now." Like, it was really impressive.
When he finally was able to come in and actually play the game and be like, "Oh, this is what it is," you saw him take that like next leap into like, "Oh man, this is going to be amazing. Like, this is going to be absolutely insane." And he delivered on that.
Yeah.
And then he can do like different. We played a lot with musical foreshadowing throughout.
There are not just songs that play every time you enter a level or whatever, but more there are themes that recur, and a particular melody might be in a song, and that melody will be related to Alex or to her brother who died before or to Jonas, and that stuff will come back based on a scene or what people are talking about, as opposed to, "We're in the fire level, time to hear the fire song." Yeah, Andy had his work cut out for him big time.
Weirdly, one of the knobs I'm tweaking is the headphone knob, which seems totally ridiculous. But this is the trick with this thing, is you take the headphone out and you plug it into the external in, and then you get this like crazy like... So that's the irony, is sending a $2,000 piece of equipment through a $30 piece of equipment.
What's so special about this place?
The island was a military fort that...
It's a tourist trap for morons who want to buy Christmas ornaments of World War II crap.
That's been another fun thing, watching people discover things. That Beacon Beach, kind of the lead song on the album, the melody is Morse code. It's been that way since we first put that online as an intro to the game, you know, almost a year ago. So that Morse code's been sitting there waiting to be discovered, and it wasn't discovered until like 2 weeks ago. And so that's like a really good feeling to be like, here it is. And now people understand that, so now people are digging deep.